Good evening. We'll have press statements by the Secretary General and the Chancellor, and then we have time for just a couple of questions. Secretary General.
Chancellor Scholz, dear Olaf, welcome to NATO. We have met many times before, but this is the first time we meet in your new capacity. So congratulations on your election as Chancellor of Germany. I really look forward to working with you, and I know that you are a staunch and committed and strong supporter of the transatlantic alliance, and I really commend your leadership in making sure that we continue to work together, North America and Europe. Germany is an important ally. You contribute to our collective security in many different ways. You are part of our mission in the Baltic region with German jets regularly patrolling the skies as part of NATO's Baltic air policing. German ships contribute to NATO deployments in the Mediterranean, and German troops help to preserve peace in our mission in Kosovo. And the NATO multinational battle group you lead in Lithuania helped to deter any aggression. So today we discussed Russia's substantial military buildup in and around Ukraine. This raises tensions and undermines security in Europe. We call on Russia to return to diplomacy and to de-escalate and to respect Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. NATO allies agree that any further aggression against Ukraine will come at a high price and have serious political and economic consequences for Russia. We welcome the talks between President Biden and President Putin and Germany's long-standing efforts in the Normandy format to find a political solution. NATO remains open to dialogue. It is even more important when tensions are high. And we stand ready to meet in the NATO-Russia Council to increase transparency and reduce any risks of miscalculation. In our meeting today, we also discussed the importance of strengthening our transatlantic bond in an age of global competition, where countries like Russia and China are undermining the rules-based international order, threatening their neighbors and expanding their nuclear capabilities. Neither Europe nor North America can face these challenges alone. We can only do so if we stand strong together in NATO. We also discussed the importance of strengthening the bond between NATO and the European Union. The European Union is a strategic partner to NATO, and we are determined to do even more together. So, dear Olaf, once again, welcome to NATO. It's great to see you here, and please have the floor.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me here and for the chance to discuss with you and continuing with all the debates we had in the past. It's not the first time for the two of us to meet, and so it is a broad debate we had in the past, and we will continue with it in the next time. The new government in Germany works very hard, and the transatlantic partnership and NATO are important for our own security. Everyone can rely on the agenda of the new government, and we will do our best to support the common security we will work on in NATO. We discussed all the topics you mentioned, and the most important one today is the question how we can save the security of the Ukraine. It is important that the borders are not in danger, and that the people and the countries in Europe can rely on what we agreed on, that there will be no change of borders and there will be no aggressive action against other countries. And this is our biggest task now, to work very hard on all the to work very hard to make it happen, that this security will be there for the Ukraine and that no one is damaging it. So this is what we talked about, and I'm happy to be here, and we will continue to discuss the questions.
Okay, we'll start with ZDF.
Florian Neuhan, ZDF German TV. Mr. Stoltenberg, first question to you. This afternoon, Russia has urged NATO to break its promise of 2008 with regard to Ukrainian membership in NATO. Are you ready to do that? And a second question to Mr. Chancellor, if I may, in German. Sie haben mehrfach versprochen, dass Sie nicht mehr Politik machen wollen über die Köpfe der Nachbarn hinweg. Jetzt aber wollen 5 NATO-Staaten alleine mit Russland reden, ohne Osteuropäer. Und die osteuropäischen Mitgliedstaaten der NATO sind darüber extrem verärgert. Wie passt das beides zusammen?
So NATO's position when it comes to our relationship with Ukraine remains unchanged. And it is a fundamental principle that every nation has the right to choose its own path. This is enshrined in many documents and agreements that also Russia has signed to, everything from the Helsinki Final Act in 1975 to the Charter of Paris to many other accords. It has been clearly stated that any sovereign, independent nation, of course, has the right to choose its own path, including what kind of security arrangements it wants to be part of. So NATO's relationship with Ukraine is going to be decided by the 30 NATO allies and Ukraine, no one else. We cannot accept that Russia is trying to re-establish a system where big powers like Russia has spheres of influence, where they can control or decide what other members can do. So that's the short answer. We are ready to sit down, talk with Russia, but not compromise on the right of every nation in Europe to decide their own path.
Ich will gerne noch einmal darauf zurückkommen, dass die wichtigste
I'm
Aufgabe
happy to
jetzt
come
ist, dafür
back
zu
to the
sorgen,
point I
dass
made. The
Sicherheit in Europa
most important
gewährleistet
task
wird.
now
Und
is
zu
to
dieser
guarantee
gemeinsamen
security in
Sicherheit
Europe.
Europa gehört eben auch die
And part and
Unverletzbarkeit
parcel of that
und
common
Verletzlichkeit
security
der
is the
Grenzen.
inviolability
Deshalb
of
ist es wichtig,
borders.
dass alle in Europa
And thus it is
gemeinsam
very
und
important
wir
that
alle
we
auch
in
als
Europe work
Verbündete klar
together, that
machen,
we,
dass wir
our
eine
allies,
Gefährdung
work
der
together to impress upon other
Integrität der
countries
Ukraine
that
nicht
threatening
akzeptieren
Ukraine's
würden. Und
integrity
das
is
ist,
something
glaube ich,
that we
auch
will
deutlich
not
geworden in allen
accept. And I
Gesprächen
think
der
we've
letzten
made that
Zeit.
amply clear
Klar
in the
ist,
many
dass es
talks
jetzt
we've
wichtig ist,
engaged
dass
in.
man
It's of course
darüber
obvious
auch in
that
einem
it's
Gespräch
important
ist.
that we
Und
keep
das
talking
wichtigste
about these
Format, das wir
matters,
dazu
and
haben,
the
ist
most
das
important format
Normandy-Format,
available to
das wir
us
auch
in
für
that
die
regard is the
Zukunft
Normandy
weiter nutzen
format.
wollen.
We
Da
intend
sind
to
feste
continue to use
Verabredungen
that
getroffen
format.
worden,
We
die jetzt
have
umgesetzt
entered
werden
into
müssen. Das wird
agreements
auch wichtig
there
sein.
in the part of the
Und
negotiations
ansonsten
of
werden wir
that
natürlich in
format.
all den Strukturen, die
And
wir
of course,
miteinander
generally
haben,
speaking, we will
darüber
avail ourselves
diskutieren,
of
wie
all
wir
the structures
gemeinsam
that are
dafür
there,
Sorge tragen können,
discussing
dass
in
dieses
those
Prinzip
formats
der
how we
gemeinsamen
can work
Sicherheit in
together
Europa
to
auch
ensure that the
tatsächlich
principle of
gewährleistet
common
werden kann.
security of Europe can
Okay,
be
we'll go to
guaranteed.
DPA.
Ja, Michael Fischer, Deutsche Presseagentur.
Michael
Herr
Fischer,
Bundeskanzler,
German Press Agency. Mr. Chancellor, the 2% target of NATO is not mentioned in the coalition agreement, and there is no clear commitment regarding nuclear sharing, neither on the part of the Greens. We hear from the Greens and also from your party, we have voices there demanding that nuclear weapons are being withdrawn from Germany, the American nuclear weapons. Have you expressed a commitment to the 2% target today in the presence of the NATO Secretary General?
I would like to know that you are worried, if you are worried that nuclear deterrence, that there is no commitment to nuclear deterrence and the 2% goal in the coalition treaty.
Ja, schönen Dank für Ihre Frage. Wenn ich das richtig verstanden habe,
Thank you for your question. If I understood this correctly, everyone is pleased with the coalition agreement and the language contained therein. So I recommend you take a closer look at that piece of paper. You will find language on the nuclear sharing that cannot be summarized as you just tried to do. Of course, we will do whatever is in our power to adequately equip the Federal Armed Forces. Over the last 4 years, it has already been our aim to make sure that that is the case, and I participated in my former capacity. We've been able to equip the Federal Armed Forces in a way that we've never seen before, and we will continue to do so within the limits set by our budget. When you look to our activities over the last few years and also in the agreement reached by the coalition parties, you will come to realize that we believe it indispensable to have a well-equipped Federal Armed Forces.
First of all, NATO's goal is a world without nuclear weapons. And at the same time, we realize that as long as these weapons exist, NATO will remain a nuclear alliance, because we don't believe that a world where we get rid of our weapons while Russia, China and countries like North Korea maintain their nuclear weapons, that's not a safer world. But the way to get there is by balanced, verifiable arms control, not by unilateral decisions. Therefore, I welcome the coalition platform, which has a clear message also on nuclear sharing. And I also welcome the very clear commitment in the platform that Germany stands by its commitments to NATO, and also clear language on the need to meet the NATO capability targets. The only way to do this is by continue to invest more in defense. I think we all understand, and Chancellor Scholz or Olaf and I, we have in common that we both have been Minister of Finance. So we know it's hard to find money. So if you want more money for defense, there has to be less money for something else. So it's never easy to find money for defense. But when we reduce defense spending, when tensions went down after the Cold War, we need to be able to increase when tensions are going up as they are now. Germany has increased over the last years, and the platform is clear on the need to invest in capabilities, meet the NATO capability targets, and meet the NATO commitments, and therefore I'm looking forward to continued increased defense spending by Germany.
Okay, many thanks. This concludes this press conference.
Thank you.
Good evening.